You're about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show, 1-877-Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. So we have talked about how microplastics have been depositing in our body. We are exposed to so much plastic. And one study from the New England Journal of Medicine is seeing that it is a potential risk factor for cardiovascular disease. These microplastics, these nanoplastics, they actually looked at 304 patients enrolled in a study. 257 completed a follow-up. And polyethylene, a plastic, was detected in carotid artery plaques of 150 patients. Carotid artery plaquing, the main artery to the brain, is, implicated in stroke. When you have plaquing that can break off, you want your carotids as pristine as possible. And electron microscopy revealed visible jagged edge foreign particles among plaque macrophages and scattered in the external debris. Some of the particles contained chlorine. They said patients in whom these micro or nanoplastics were detected within the atheroma, which is kind of the plaque on their carotid arteries, were at higher risk for a primary endpoint event, meaning people with carotid artery plaquing and which had plastics detected are now at a higher risk for heart attack, stroke, or death of any cause at 34 months compared to those where they did not detect plastics in our body. This is pretty startling. Well, we've been talking about this for a while. Headline not as sexy until what we are seeing this week with the headline, Microplastics Found in Human Penises. Well, now everybody's worried about plastics. So there was a study published in IJIR, Your Sexual Medicine Journal, and they took samples from 6 different men who had been diagnosed with erectile dysfunction. The samples were taken between August and September of 2023. Now, the microplastics were about the size of a sesame seed. And the plastic doesn't decompose, but the pieces might get smaller. But they could enter the body through ingestion, inhalation, plastic containers, leaching from heat. But they found several different kinds of microplastics that embedded in the penile tissue in the study. So when I look at the study, this is interesting. They discussed the proliferation of microplastics. They measured less than 5 millimeters in diameter. Now, 10 millimeters is a centimeter. So you could see these plastics, okay? They're still visible to the naked eye. And they wanted to study these because these microplastics infiltrated atmospheric, freshwater, terrestrial ecosystems, according to the study authors. But what they did is they wanted to see if it aggregated in penile tissue. So they looked at these six individuals. They underwent surgery for penile prosthesis. So these were people that didn't volunteer saying, okay, go ahead and biopsy and check. These were people that were already undergoing a surgical procedure for erectile dysfunction, getting a multi-component inflatable penile prosthesis. Samples were obtained while they were under anesthesia from the corpora using forceps. I won't go into too much detail because corporotomy can make you kind of cringe and cross your legs. And there was dilation, device implantation. We've talked about penile implants, and we could do that at another time. But then they evaluated the tissue, and they found the microplastics in 80% of the samples. Now, these were people with erectile dysfunction. And remember what I told you, erectile dysfunction can be a sign of heart disease. So if we have issues with your erections, there's a very good chance that blood flow is also being affected to your heart or to your brain. And so I'm not surprised that they found 80% of the samples with this because, if we do have a behavior of depositing things and not being able to glean and clean out and filter well and have the most purest of blood, yes, we're going to start seeing sediments and deposits. Smaller particles down to 2 microns were detected. 7 types of plastics were found in the penile tissue, including polyethylene terephthalate, polypropylene being the most prevalent. So 47.8% and 34.7% respectively, those were the types of the plastics of the 7 types. Those were the most prevalent. So this could affect sexual health. I know we've been talking about plastics and our heart and stroke risk. And that might not convince anybody to do something or act. But now we're talking about penile tissue and erectile dysfunction? Huh. And it's interesting that 80% of individuals who were requiring an implant needed the plastics. Now, why is that significant? Well, erectile dysfunction can be treated with testosterone supplementation if your testosterone is low, erectile dysfunction medications like Viagra, Cialis, Levitra. But these were individuals, 6 men, who needed an implant. You don't go for implant stage 1. That means they're failing the medications. They're failing other issues, which means their erectile dysfunction might not be low testosterone. If you have poor blood flow, there's only so much these medications can do. How Viagra works is it stops a feedback mechanism to keep the blood in the penis longer. It doesn't necessarily make you sexually enhanced. It doesn't make you more horny or randy or whatever word you want for it. It doesn't make you more passionate, but when you do want to have sex and blood starts to go there, it'll retain it longer by being a phosphodiesterase E5 inhibitor to allow the blood to still remain in the penis. The fact that these gentlemen needed surgery means the medication isn't working after a while. Either they used it too long, body got used to it, their blood flow or coronary artery disease or peripheral arterial disease is severe, or there's something else gumming up the works. And that could be the plastics. So we don't necessarily bring up plastics every time we talk about heart disease, every time we talk about erectile dysfunction. But this study is suggesting that maybe we need to. Maybe we need to take a look at what we're doing and what we're exposed to and exposing ourselves to. I'm surrounded by plastic. I know that I could get a glass from the cupboard, get some water, but I prefer to grab a plastic bottle of water. Should I be doing that? It's hot outside. And heat causes plastics to leach. We really need to rethink about limiting our exposure to plastics. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI.
Considered by most, optimized curcumin is one of the few bioavailable and highly absorbable curcumin products on the market. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch. Since most chronic diseases have inflammation, our optimized curcumin seems to be a perfect addition to any nutritional program. It makes sense to me that preventing or reducing inflammation is a key component to our overall health. The Mayo Clinic found that curcumin can decrease swelling and inflammation, has antioxidant properties, and research suggests that curcumin can prevent cancer, or at least slow the spread of cancer, and in many instances make chemotherapy more effective. It protects our healthy cells even from radiation. TotalWellness.com, where we help you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. That has every show we do also available for you. So it's interesting. Many of you know I have cats and dogs. Well, I currently have one dog, 3 cats. You know, as they age out, I've adopted multiple animals in my lifetime because I just love animals. And it's interesting because I get a lot of cat questions. And, you know, I'm not a veterinarian, so I can't necessarily answer a lot of your questions. But when you have a lot of animals, sometimes you kind of know what behaviors are, etc. So like a cat deciding to go pee-pee where they're not supposed to go pee-pee. You know, you have a cat that knows there's a litter box, but decides to go poo-poo on your bed or pee-pee on your bed or on your favorite dress. They're trying to get your attention. Either they're ill, they're not feeling well, they don't like the food you served them, or they just want to get your attention. For me, it's because I might be overdue on cleaning the potty box. But these animals have different ways of talking to you. And it's interesting. There's a recent article saying weird cat behaviors that you're worried about. This is under Pets Radar. And this is very interesting because people are like, you know, my cat is weird. We have one cat that we adopted that is now about 7 years old, maybe 8. I think about 8 years old. And she always wants to be pet. She always wants lovey-dovey. We call lovey-dovey where she gets her little ears rubbed and tummy rubbed. But then halfway through, she bites. And my husband's like, I don't want to touch her. She's biting me. I don't want to touch her. And so why is that? Why is she asking? And then she bites. And so my first thought is, well, you touched a sensitive spot. She was ticklish. But he's like, no, it could be anywhere that I've been petting for the last 5-10 minutes. Well, it could be that the cat wants you to stop. But usually cats will start to go away or when they bite, but then they seem remorseful and they don't run away. So my cat will accidentally bite. And I think it's an accident. I think it's a reflex. And then you see she's tired and she likes, no, keep rubbing me. And I'm like, well, no, I can't. I'm bleeding. I can't keep rubbing you. Sometimes it is where they have a sensitive spot. And so always get them checked out to make sure that there's not a part of their body that is sensitive. But it could also be a reflex. And I could tell when my cat feels bad, you know, because she keeps, you know, can I get rubbed again? Can I get rubbed again? So what I do is I only rub her in areas where she can't bite. But sometimes she wants rubbed tummy and she wants rubbed neck and she will ask for it. And I'm like, oh gosh, let me put a glove on. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes cats do licky, sucky, kissy, where they lick your neck or arm and then they start sucking on it. And you're like, what are they doing? This is my neck. This is my hand. Well, some pets are still in that baby phase. That's what they used to do with their moms. And when they are nursing. And even though they're not getting milk, some of them are still arrested in that psychological stage where they like to just sit there. And we had one cat. We've had tons of different cats throughout our lifetime, but we had one that every night would jump on our chest when we'd be watching TV and want to sit there and just suck on your neck. And I'm like, this is ticklish. I can't handle it. No. You know, and so we called it licky, sucky, kissy. We didn't know what else to call it. And this cat just seemed to like doing that. It just calmed it down. Who knows? People always ask, why do cats knock things over? Cats love to knock things over. Why is that? Is it because they like the sound? Is it because they like the power of it? It could be. Now, I think it's because the cats are used to things being laid, like my cats. When one cat is standing, everybody gets up to go over to the cat, the main boy cat, and find out, like, at attention, you know, we're here, sire. What do you need? But when the cats are laying down, they seem to be more comfortable. I notice that too. If I walk into a room, some of the cats will come up to me, but if I lie down, they all run over to me. And it could be that some cats prefer things down. They think the thing standing up is in the wrong position and they're fixing it. Did you ever see that video of that cat playing pool where the owner tries to shoot the ball, but the ball doesn't go in? So the cat knocks the ball in. Cats are smart, so the cat could be trying to fix it. But when a cat likes to break something and you're like, what the hell did you do? That could just be spite. They might just like it. Sometimes your cats will make faces when they potty. That could be pain. Any sort of cringe or that, get them checked out. Some cats like water. When the water's going on, they will sit there and play with it. You would think cats don't like water, but some of them do that. Why? Because it's moving. It's fascinating. Cats still drink water. I know they may not want to go swimming or be in a bathtub, but I had one cat that wanted to get into the shower with me. They just liked either the sound of the water or that sometimes happens. Cats will headbutt. When a cat loves you and tries to connect, they will bang their head against yours. And I've had multiple cats that have done that. And, you think they want kisses. They want you to play with their paws. No. How cats show affection is they rub up against you. And so with my one cat, I'll take my head and I'll just rub my forehead on his forehead. They don't like always the tickle under the neck or the rub tummy, but sometimes that's just a term of endearment. And again, it's a way to communicate. Cats will close their eyes to talk to you. My cat does. My cat will stare me down and not blink for 20 minutes. And I'm like, do you want something yummy to eat? Are you hungry? And then he blinks his eyes as an answer. So read your cats. Watch their eyes. They will communicate you with eyes. Another thing cats might do is they knead the dough. They look like they're kneading dough with their hands. That, again, is a habit that many babies do. And the reason why is for them to sometimes get their milk from mom, they have to knead the breast area of mama cat. And so it's sometimes a very soothing habit that cats will do. Also, they might want to sharpen their claws and things like that. One thing that is, though, concerning to patients is the zoomies that cats have, because a cat may have a zoomie and run across your face and lacerate your face. My eyebrow was split because a cat decided to run across my face. These sometimes happen at night, and we call them zoomies, where it's a burst of energy where they all of a sudden decide to just sprint. Now, sometimes they could be startled and sprint, and then their nails get caught in your face. But sometimes it's that they just get energy. They get stimulated. They could be stressed. Zoomies might happen once in a while, but if it happens a lot, get them checked out because we want to make sure, they're not bit by something like bit by a spider or undergoing any amount of stress. Cats, interesting. Cats usually like to position themselves where they could see the whole room. They do not want to be cornered, but sometimes they don't want to be bugged by humans and they will isolate in a box. My cat's favorite toys is an Amazon box. And usually something they can't fit into. I don't know why they prefer to go into things that they don't fit into. It's ridiculous, but especially my one cat that's fat. But they do sometimes like it, but they want to still be facing the room. So if you think they want some silence and less stimuli and they want to go, but they still want to be able to watch everything, sometimes a box is a nice thing to offer them. Don't close the box. Some animals will eat plants. You got to be very, very careful about your house plants. People will always give plants as gifts, and I'm like, thank you. But the problem with that is some of the plants can be hazardous. So you need to be aware of that and always do your homework. Another thing cats like to do is cover their food from the other cats and hide their cats. So my cat will find my husband's underwear he left on the floor, drag it over, and cover their food with his underwear to hide it. It's ridiculous. And so now, not only am I dealing with dirty underwear, but I'm dealing with dirty underwear with cat food on it. So some of them cover their poop. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes cats will not cover their poop because they're like, I just don't want to. I don't want to go through the extra effort. Or they're doing it as territory. This is my potty box. Don't use my potty box. So sometimes if you have multiple cats, you need to give them their own potty boxes. Finally, when your cat lays on their back, sometimes that might mean they want rubbed tummy, but sometimes it's because they're just comfortable being on their back and lying in pap smear position, which we call it. Don't always go up and rub their tummy if you think they're going to bite. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI.
Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, long COVID, which we have kind of struggled to explain because it's still new. I mean, we were struggling to figure out regular COVID, let alone, long COVID. We are slowly unifying a definition of that. If you remember, they didn't want us calling it long COVID. Back in 2021, Dr. Fauci, in a press release, said many of you are now aware of what had long been called long COVID, but actually it is a post-acute sequelae of SARS-CoV-2 infection, which we're referring to as PASC or PASC. And so at the time, we were still struggling with what to call somebody who's still having COVID symptoms. Some of these post-COVID symptoms could just be mildly annoying, or they could be quite incapacitating. And one study had found that 30% of those who recovered from COVID had symptoms for up to 9 months. Now, mind you, that has now changed because some people still years later after having COVID are struggling. And at the time, some of the initial signs were chronic cough, fatigue, loose teeth, hair loss, fatigue, depression, anxiety, fever, brain fog, poor concentration, memory loss, chest pain, shortness of breath, joint pain, body aches, loss of taste, loss of smell, a strange taste in the mouth, testicular pain. I've noticed vaginal ulcers and vaginal issues, rectal pain, anorexia, digestive issues, diarrhea, heart abnormalities, lung injury, renal insufficiency, blood clots, hiccups, tinnitus, ringing in the ears, double vision, hallucinations, and more. And I think a couple years ago, French researchers reported eye nodules. This is just so weird. And like I said, I have never seen anything in the natural world cause this. I mean, I don't want to give COVID an unnatural descriptor, but this is just weird. So now we have some new, shall we say, we are redefining long COVID, and a new consensus definition has been established by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. So the definition is an infection-associated chronic condition, IACC, that occurs after SARS-CoV-2 infection and is present for at least 3 months as a continuous, relapsing, and remitting or progressive disease state that affects one or more organ systems. Now, some people are like, well, anybody then could technically qualify. Well, the NASEM, which is National Academy of Science and Engineering, said long COVID is an infection-associated chronic condition present for at least 3 months, continuing, relapsing, and remitting, or it's a progressive disease state. And a recent study from the Census Bureau found that as of March 5th to April 1, 18% of U.S. adults are reporting long COVID. 7% are currently dealing with it. So this definition of 3 months as opposed to 6 months, etc., I'm okay with. I'm just not okay with us having long COVID. I'm pretty ticked off. If this really was a manipulated virus, I am furious. If we funded this, I'm even more furious. But the long COVID is what prompted me to suggest for those of you at high risk to get vaccinated. And it still does. Listen, I'm not a big fan of the vaccines, but I'm not a fan of COVID either. And I'm not a fan of long COVID. And I have people who have never recovered. COVID did such a number. It was like a truck driving through your organs. And even with me, I notice my memory is different. I notice my voice is different. I notice my smell is different. And I was very grateful not to have bad COVID. And I think it's because I built up some natural immunity, being around patients, etc. But, this long COVID is going to be very complicated because disability claims are rising. And long COVID could cause disabling conditions of your heart, your brain, your GI system. And so we have, when it's interesting because when you apply for a job, they ask your gender, they ask your race, they say it's voluntary, but if you don't fill it out, probably not going to get the job. But they also ask, are you disabled? Do you have any of these conditions? And when you start to look at the conditions, it's very hard to not. I mean, many people have, I say no, I don't. But, many people might want the job and say, yeah, I have irritable bowel, or yeah, I have this, and I have this from COVID. Long COVID is sometimes very difficult to objectify. It's not like I could run a test and say you have long COVID. Long COVID does not, in its definition, require a positive blood test because most COVID virus particles die off or leave your body or are not detectable after 14 days. Some of us, we might trigger the test to be positive for months. And for some of us, I think some of the dead virus particles could cause chronic inflammation. But I have always suspected that for some of us, the virus may persist and live and hide out. And that concerns me. Usually, if you have dead virus particles, your body will get rid of it. Microplastics accumulate, but I don't really think viral particles will accumulate. They're biodegradable. They have a shelf life. But then why are people not able to still smell or taste? And so another concern I also have is, are we going to be lazy, fatigued, and say, look, this patient who has this patient probably has long COVID. Next patient. But if that person is having brain fog, is anybody evaluating them for Alzheimer's? If that person has GI issues, are they evaluating them for cancer? It's going to be very difficult to figure out if your issue is long COVID or not. Now, how would we figure this out? Well, if you had COVID and the symptoms started after, or if you had COVID, the symptoms started during COVID and then they persisted, that might lean towards that. But if you notice, my bowels don't work right since the whole COVID pandemic, how do we know? How can we go back? Now, if we do find out that COVID persists and hides out in the body, and we have a way to test that, that could help. That could actually be very effective. But right now, we don't. We don't even have adequate COVID tests because people who have COVID aren't testing positive. We really need to update our tests. But, if you tell a patient, I have long COVID, I need a refill of my cough medication, that doctor might online, if it's an online doctor, might say, okay, fine, here's your medicine. See you later. Whereas I'm going to be like, wait, how long have you been coughing for? When was your last chest x-ray? I don't want long COVID to mask cancer or mask something more persistent. Now, there's a lot of controversy over what do we do to treat people. Paxlovid, allegedly, if you take that when your first 5 days of COVID, could minimize your COVID, minimize your long COVID. But we can't give it to you for long COVID. We don't really have treatments. So if you're like, I'm still coughing, help. I can't just give you Paxlovid. You had COVID months ago. We just treat the cough. Now, what if? What if you do have long COVID? Should we treat it with an antiviral? Some studies have failed to confirm that it works. One study said metformin might have decreased your chance. I know we're still mixed on ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. It'd be really interesting to ask the hydroxychloroquine patients who have lupus or RA if they don't have long COVID. But we really need to look at this and get this defined. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOCDALI.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our Fantasy Football Pocket Guide for Beginners found on Amazon or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. So as you all know, I am not a big fan of election years. It is very stressful for people. Patients aren't happy. The ads, I just can't keep watching these ads. Very confusing. In my neck of the woods, there were ads on some of the candidates. There was an ad promoting him, and then there was an ad against him, or an ad against him, and then an ad promoting him. And you're like, I don't even know what to believe anymore. And when you watch that, you just realize you lost 2 minutes of your life. And you have no more clarity on the candidate, which is, I think, also very frustrating for people. There were some doctors who ran. And so people were trying to find out how to learn more about that doctor. So do you go to that medical board? Will that tell you if they're going to be a good politician? I think a medical board is great to see if they've had past sanctions against them. But, how do you tell if they're going to be a good politician? So people would ask me, do I know Dr. So-and-so? Do I know Dr. So-and-so? I don't. I've never worked with them. And I see people struggle with how to figure out who to vote for. This isn't just about Biden and Trump. We have senatorial candidates, Congress candidates. Always confusing people are the referendums or these legislative bills. Vote no on proposition, whatever, vote yes on. And one of the past elections, I was trying to educate myself on what this meant, because sometimes what the government gives you as a summary is not very comprehensive. You really don't know the ins and outs. And when you try to read it, it's very confusing. And somebody said, vote yes if you're Democrat, vote no if you're Republican. That most of these additions are Democrat-led. And I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I usually vote mixed based on what I think we need. But, that's really confusing for people. And you're voting for somebody that could be a sweet talker, could be using all these, bells and whistles, and you need to make a decision. The reason why people always talk about Biden and Donald Trump is we've gotten to, from any other candidate, we've gotten to see a lot more of these candidates. Trump, because he has Truth Social, he's able to get some news outlets to cover his talks. So if you want to see Trump, you have access to it. It was difficult when he was being banned from Twitter and things like that. But there is accessibility to see that candidate, which I think was wrong to block candidates. And same thing with Biden. Unfortunately for Biden, the media isn't working well for him because there's so much media on him that they're catching these meanderings, these gaffes. Now, but the main reason why I don't like election years is when I see the amount of money being spent, and it's like a stab. It's like pouring salt on the wound or a stab in your back, even though this isn't me personally, but I look at the money spent and I'm like, you know what that money could do for our community? You know what that could do to help kids and cancer and the hospital system? And so one headline is Biden is launching a $50 million ad campaign. $50 million. And they're launching this ad buy, among other expenditures, targeting voters in battleground states and highlighting the verdict in Trump's hush money trial. It's a 30-second spot. It's going to air in battleground states throughout the rest of June. $50 million. Now, I get in elections, you have to spend money. You know what? I told you guys this. When reality TV was really big in the teens, I wanted to try something where I ran for office, only doing like lemonade stands, garage sales, where I didn't ask people for big money. And I went around and I would go around doing grassroots and then hopefully gain popularity or notoriety, get some media attention, and to show how to run for office inexpensively. And I wanted to do that. The only problem is you had to give up your show. You can't be in the media when you run. You had to. I would have had to give up my show, give up all my affiliates. I would have had to, give up my job. So I didn't go with it because I wasn't ready to do that because you need money. I still need to feed my family. But I still would love to see that done. How to run for office without spending money. One of the reasons why Trump was very attractive is because he said, don't give me money. I got money for my campaign. Now, he's a smart businessman, so he probably learned, look, you're allowed to get, you're going to go broke if you're not relying on voter contributions. There are laws allowing you to get voter contributions and be able to use those for your campaign. So eventually he did. But in the beginning, he was like, you don't have to give me money. It's okay. And that was very attractive to people. $50 million. I mean, it looks like Julia Roberts, George Clooney, everybody who wants to pose with them, I'm sure, have given a lot of money. But I would really love to see that money go to orphans, go to fighting childhood cancer, go to these pet refuges, there's so much that money could go to. And $50 million is being spent on attacking another candidate. And I'm sure Trump's team is spending money too. And of course, all the Democratic National Convention is going to be, really zone in on Trump being a convicted felon. Now they could call him a convicted felon, change all the dynamics in terms of that. Although I think it's helping, especially him with his base. And so, I understand that these ads do provide jobs. Money in media does provide jobs. Media does need money too. But it kills me. When you looked at the millions upon millions of dollars spent on Obamacare and the website and the ads pushing Obamacare, I'm like, that money could have gone to setting up free clinics. And I know somebody talked about, I think there was one law looking at limiting spending. I would rather, if you had $1 million or $10,000 or $20,000, I would rather you donate that to the local children's charity, to help firefighters get new equipment. This is probably going to be one of the most expensive elections yet. Also because of inflation, I am sure ad buys are a lot more than they were in 2020 and 2016. And it's gonna really hurt seeing those numbers spent. I understand the gravity of the situation. This is a very big election. Whoever wins is going to be able to nominate the next set of Supreme Court justices or the next, nominee or more. I understand there's a lot of issues with the border, a lot of issues with foreign policy coming up. We could be drawn into wars. There's a lot riding on that. But is that $50 million better spent on maybe take some of that $50 million and secure the border? If you really want to help your campaign, Biden, secure the border. And then show people what you did, because we have, some of these illegal immigrants are raping 13-year-olds and killing our U.S. citizens. I think, it's really a disconnect, and we've allowed it to go this far. I don't know what the price tag on this election is going to eventually be. But we're going to have to endure these very expensive ads when the money could have gone to something else. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, 1-877-DOCDALI.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com. where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.